Welcome to the Cyber Incident Exercising podcast. This is where we're going to discuss all things cyber incident exercising. And today I'm lucky enough to be joined by Stacey Lidgate from CYSIAM, who's an expert in the topic. So what makes incident exercising come alive for your clients and your customers?
Normally for us, it's a bit of a mixture, fun, real life scenarios, and trying to make it as, especially on the tabletops, as real as possible. So if we're not doing technically simulated attacks like those live play kind of exercises that NCSC talk about, how do we give them a flavour of that panic mode? So what is it going to feel like when they see their logo up on social media or on a website where there's maybe a countdown until the data gets sold on the dark web?
Rabbit in headlights.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that kind of heart in mouth moment. Like, how do we make that a real thing for people? And I think once we can show people how that feels, and we get that kind of instant rabbit in headlights moment, like you mentioned, how do you get beyond that, have no surprises, and work out that regardless of the scenario that you're in or the situation or the attack kind of incident that you're in, it's the same set of principles. So that who, why, what, where, when, get your commands, get your communications mechanisms, which team is going to talk to who is allowed to pass on those messages, and you've got resilience with deputies nominated and people can step into your shoes if you're not there. That's a fantastic, confident base to build off.
Yeah, so how do you know you've done a really good exercise?
So I think for us, it's one of two things. People have never done one before, have come away feeling that little bit more confident about themselves. They have noted down a lot of actions for improvement. And even if you have got the most exercised plan in the world, that you're still identifying areas for improvement. So for us, it's people not resting on their laurels, people constantly engaged, and people constantly raising their standards and getting better.
Brilliant. But it can't all be rabbit in headlights. You must have some fun with it.
I think for me, it's that blend between how do you facilitate and engage and try and see those maybe grey areas that haven't been thought about before, and how do you have that little bit of fun? You know, it is a really serious topic. Like, let's be perfectly honest. A cyber incident is something that can cripple any organisation. It can mean businesses go bankrupt. I was down in Somerset working with one of the cyber resilience centres earlier this week and hearing about people that have just been massively affected by this. It affects personal lives. It affects staff. It is one of the top risks of most organisations, whether you're for profit or not.
Every organisation that has premises has to do fire alarm drills and have fire exits and test that plan. But, since the pandemic, so many organisations are now doing hybrid working. Some people never go to the office, they work from home. So actually, the most important thing to test is actually their exercise plans for a cyber incident.
Even when we sit there and say, what's the response that you're going to have? A lot of the time these days it'll be, is everybody in the office? Could you definitely say that there was a single room that we could do as our kind of command centre or control centre? And it might be that you're having to revert to different systems that you don't use every day to get people together in a really hybrid way. What if your chief executive or kind of head of a particular department is on holiday in Costa Rica? Like, what do you do if they're the one that knows exactly what to do? And we often ask people that question. Well, what would happen if the person that was responsible had only joined the organisation a week ago or a month ago? Are your plans that logical that they could pick it up and know exactly what to do? Or is there an element of kind of gained knowledge from being around and just knowing how things work? So be really clear with your plans and be really, really clear on how it will work.
There's hardly a week that goes by, really, is there, where there's something in the media, something in the news about an organisation that's had some kind of cyber incident, and usually a serious one. You always hear the classic line, don't you? A persistent and sophisticated attack.
Yeah.
But how does an organisation actually deal with the media in those sorts of circumstances?
There are lots of different ways, and of course it's going to depend on the type of organisation that you are and your message and what the kind of ethos of your organisation is. But a lot of the time it's trying to be as transparent as you can, and if you are dealing with a customer or a client base, communicating with them and looking after them. So if you've been breached and it might be people's personal identifying information that's out there, well, what might the impact be? Identity theft, potential finance loss. How are you really leaning in and looking after those clients? Very last thing that you want to do is lose the trust of people. So normally we work with people to think about media strategies, and not just us. A lot of cyber insurers will often provide professional experts that will help people get hold of those types of strategies, and PR experts that can really help with kind of messages that rebuild trust as well. But normally we say the most important thing is don't use the trust, do the right thing, be honest. Don't just say persistent threat. No persistent threat here. We've never had an incident. No, don't know what you're talking about. Be honest.
Yeah, honest is the best policy,
Yeah.
and I guess being honest, it sort of can take it away from the hackers a little bit, doesn't it? Because part of their ploy is to almost shame the organisation to being tricked in the first place.
I think it depends on the threat actor. I think these days we see kind of four main kind of threat actors. We've got the kind of hostile state actors, so the big kind of Russia, China, North Korea, Iran. We see hacktivists, so maybe a hacking group haven't got the same kind of ethos as you. They don't believe in the same things. They literally want to kind of take over or disagree with what we're doing. We might see kind of criminal gangs. So a lot of the time you're hearing about these ransomware groups that are kind of going after the financial gains. And then we see these kind of, I won't say unsophisticated because that's not at all giving them the kudos for the skills that they've got. But we call them script kiddies. So the people that might just be learning about the internet, playing around with code and not really understanding the ramifications of finding something and playing around with it. So, I think it massively depends on maybe the type of person that you're dealing with as to how sophisticated the attack is going to be. But I think, one of the things that we were chatting about, I think that over at the International Cyber Expo was just how low the barrier to entry is for cyber attacks these days. A ransomware attack can be bought off the dark web from as little as $5 these days. It is big business, and it is a ever-evolving business model where you have got professionals, they've got service desks, they've got feedback, they have got continual improvement cycles, they have got releases of new patches and upgrades. It's a business, and it's a big business that is worth a lot of money. So, the likelihood that you are going to be attacked by one of these kind of schemes is just becoming ever increasing. It is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when these days.
It's scary, isn't it?
Really scary,
I mean, the general public doesn't know how commercially these organisations are set up now, do they?
Our chief exec, Dave, has written quite a few papers on the kind of evolution of ransomware. So where has it started? Those smaller groups that have maybe gone out and done these kind of large attacks. And a bit like anything, it has evolved over time to be more efficient, to be more effective, to bring in those big profits. And actually to specialise in the skills that they've got. If you're an expert in writing ransomware code, why would you go and try and, hack access into an organisation? You would outsource that to an expert. So we tend to see these pockets of really expert people working together to try and get into an organisation. So we spend a lot of time trying to stop that before it happens. But obviously with incident response exercising, the brilliant thing is, even if it does, being more prepared for an incident is going to put any organisation on the front foot. So not having any surprises, making sure that you know exactly how to respond, and making sure that you don't panic. And roles, responsibilities, that command control communication, really, really important.
So we're going to wrap this up fairly soon. I've just got one last question for you. So professional incident exerciser, what should they, when the client is engaged with them and they've done their exercise, what should they expect at the end of the day?
So I think there's a few stages. There's definitely an element of before the exercise, during the incident exercise, and then after the incident exercise. So beforehand, we would expect to see, a lot of communication backwards and forwards, understanding what the objectives of your organisation are. What is it that you want to achieve? How mature are you? Is this the first time you've done it or the 10th time that you've done it? Like, where are you on your kind of maturity journey, and how can you work with that individual to understand kind of what needs to happen and what's going to be the best scenario for you. Again, if it's your 10th, you don't want to be doing the 10th iteration of the same thing. Like, how do we mix that up? We had a couple a few weeks ago where I think one of my guys decided with the head of IT that we would do a really simple fire in the server room. So it wasn't necessarily about a hack or a cyber incident, but again, remember that confidentiality, availability, integrity triangle. Availability, there's a fire in your server room, you can't use the computers. Like, how do you deal with that? So beforehand, a lot of communication between yourself, the organisation, and us to say, what's the main driver? What's good for you? What kind of a scenario is going to work? Normally then the professional will go away, write that scenario. So they would think about the kind of injects or how that interactivity would work, the types of things that need to be achieved throughout the incident exercise. And then afterwards, straight after, there would normally be a little bit of a feedback, playback around how it went, a little bit of how did that feel for everybody in the room, short, medium, long-term action plan. A little bit later on, I would expect that person to be following up on those actions, kind of holding people to account and making sure that it was properly being applied. And obviously for the individual, a little bit of feedback of, did I do a good job or not? Or do you never want me to darken your door again?
It's a test of leadership, I think.
Yeah, and I think the really lovely thing about incident response is it doesn't have to be the most technical people in your organisation that do it. I think absolutely a solid foundation in cybersecurity theory, absolutely necessary. But it brings together facilitation skills, communication skills, consultancy skills, people skills. You know, it's about being a little bit of both. So you can be that person in cybersecurity that isn't that deep technical expert and still have a fantastic impact and make the world a better place, I think. Great.
I think it's so important for organisations to understand what a professional looks like, really. I think this is the whole purpose of the NCSC accreditation.
Yeah, and do you know what? There are some absolutely brilliant companies across the UK that are doing this. So this to be able to give them that kind of stamp that says they are brilliant at what they do is it's fantastic for the industry. It's fantastic for the UK. Whether they are specialists in kind of consulting and resilience building like we are, or whether they're the kind of people that run those cyber incident kind of escape rooms and stuff like that. There's some really creative companies out there that are doing really good work. So yeah, fantastic opportunity for them as well.
Let's keep this going.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Cheers.